It is Tuesday, and this is Trekland HQ, and we are live. Hashtag RIP Alan Asherman and the writer's strike. Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live, with me, Dr. Trek Larry Nemechek, coming at you right here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 via Trekland Treks for some sanity, clarity, and the big picture in things Star Trek. So happy Tuesday, everybody. Hey, let me get the chat window up here so that when everybody comes in, I can see it happening. Thank you for joining us for another Tuesday Live. We're here every week. Look, if you are new to us, thank you for joining us today on this Tuesday. A lot of you, we have so many folks who normally try to come in, but it is mid-afternoon. We have folks from around the world. That's why. But if you are new to Trekland Tuesdays Live, make sure you introduce yourself in the chat. Tell everybody howdy, where you're from, what's the weather like, what dialect of your language you speak, all of those interesting tidbits, because we've got folks from all corners of the globe who join us here. They join us because I'm going to go on a little rant, or maybe we could call it an essay, a little soapbox for a few minutes on today's topic. Then we'll take a short break, and then we'll have maybe a half hour or so of chat. All righty? That's when I'll get to the chat. So I'm not ignoring you up front. We will get back. In fact, I even back scroll. People mark the time. You'll see what I mean. And meanwhile, I'm so glad you can be with us. You should know, though, in the chat that if you're on Facebook or Twitch, you're seeing it all. Facebook, you're only going to see Facebook only. And if you are on YouTube, I would be more than thrilled and honored if you would take advantage of our super chat feature and throw a little silver our way. I just nickel and dime it, but every little bit helps as we spread the message here and as we spread our Trekland online operations. We're looking at making some changes the next few months, some tweaks, and well, it's just good to know that you're out there. And I have Patreon. I will thank our Patreon folk in just a little bit when we're done. But I've got a split focus this week. I've got a split focus even as we head into the fall, and it's Star Trek location tour season. So if you're headed to LA, or even if you're not, maybe you'll think about heading this way, spending a day or two with me, letting me help you set up, plan, and then guide you on your own customized, unique Star Trek away mission, your own landing party to the location sites that you pick. You pick 4, we have lunch, we have a great day. I am your driver, your concierge, your prop wrangler, your cosplay holder. TreklandTreks.com. Check it out, will you? All righty. Now, I've got a split focus this week. I was already intending to talk about someone, and then boom, yeah, we had the news that these guys, as we've seen it the last few months, the writer's strike is tentatively over. It's got to cross the T's, dot the I's, and have final votes. Writer's strike is done. The picketing is done. This fellow, as such, you won't see the familiar black and red signs. You know, the full bore one here. The Writers Guild is settled. There's no picketing while they are getting the contract certified, all the wording done legal, and then submitted to the channels, the negotiating committee approval, then the national board approval. Then it'll be submitted to membership in 10 days, 2 weeks. We'll see. There'll be a few days for writing. And then once a new deal is ratified, then they will take legal steps to formally end the strike. But for right now, they're technically still on strike. And you know what? Yes, this is the sign from the Star Trek Day site that I did. I didn't do one. I didn't do my own sign. Yes, I did, but it wasn't this clever. It wasn't, it wasn't like this. But this gal is going to go back in the historical closet. But what is happening is there's no end to the strikes. Just to clarify now, the actors are still on strike. SAG-AFTRA is still on strike in LA and New York, everywhere. Now, that also means, and before this drives me crazy, hey girl, go. That also means that anybody allied SAG-AFTRA, I mean, for SAG-AFTRA, that means the Writers Guild, as much as the Teamsters, IATSE, fans, family, there are still pickets going on. And there are Writers Guild members, solidarity, strength. There are Writers Guild members who are free to go join their strike, just as many actors came over and walked the line, and IATSE, and the Teamsters, and fans and family, to join their strike, just as they had done before the actors were on strike. So you'll see that. Now, they won't be using Writers Guild signs. They may have Writers Guild in support of, but there will be no more Writers Guild on strike signs, you'll see. And the buttonage will all shift for that accordingly, too. I know the news broke Sunday night. You had the idea that once they met Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday, that they were on the home run deal here. There was a lot of cynical talk about they wanted to wrap up before the Yom Kippur holiday, that there was a lot of wanting to wrap up before the fourth quarter started October 1st, whatever. And of course, all kinds of cynical hindsight saying, well, if you did this fast right now, it's the same thing you could have done 5 days in. You could have done it before there was a need to call a strike. AMPTP, studios, you could have done this at day one, much less day 0. But we are here. It was day 146, 1 day away from the magic 147, obviously. There you go. No one wanted to hit 47, apparently. But here we are. And most importantly, the actors are still out there. Can the producer studios walk and chew gum at the same time? Can they restart talks with it? Now, they haven't, and we would know that because there would be a joint statement between the AMPTP and SAG-AFTRA to say, yes, we are restarting talks, just the same way we had with the Writers Guild, a week ago. We will restarting at this day coming up soon in the future, as soon as people can align their schedules for live meetings. So we're waiting on that. But the point is that, as usual, of the 3 big guilds, and the directors checked out early, oops, didn't get as good a deal, I'm sure. The writers are usually the ones there's like 11,500 Writers Guild members. I forget how many actors there are, but they're the hugest, and they're the smallest in the Directors Guild. And that's even including the first and second ADs and some of the other associated professions. Now, the writers are like the middle child, and they're kind of the one that unifies the easiest, and they're the ones that, I'll say it, can be the most militant. And they are the ones that are often the canary in the coal mine when it comes to, if there's a new wall of technology or process like this year, they're the ones to finally, once they break through that wall, now there's a lot of talking points, and there's a measurement systems, there's transparency systems agreed to. We're still waiting on the details from the Writers Guild contract. Little bits are gonna slip out. They will talk to the membership. The membership will share with the public, or they will put out statements. But once some of those paradigms have been created, some of those walls have been crashed, now they've got language and talking points and conceptual designs around that they can structure that to the actors, because a lot of these things overlap. AI, the way residuals, and everything to do with streaming, it's not new media anymore, and that's what had been bleeding everybody dry. Oh, it's new. We don't know how to measure and pay on this. Well, thank you. It's been 8-10 years now. So we'll see how fast things swivel around to the actors. We'll see, once it does, how fast things come together for them. But there's still no shooting. There's still no structured, written production, and anything involving SAG-AFTRA is obviously not happening. Technically, the writers aren't even supposed to be back at work, although, the way everybody hates deadlines, minds are spinning. So we will see what's going on. Anyway, the light's at the end of the tunnel, and it's coming oncomingly quickly. So that's all good. It's just going to be a transition time as things get back to work, hopefully. And as the world starts to breathe again. Meanwhile, it has been a long, hot labor summer. The UAW is on strike. And I'm still going to say, when we look back at this year, the The pandemic ripped the Band-Aid, exposed so many ills of our society and economic, so much unfairness and injustice. It's had repercussions all the way from education to the sociology and psychology of our kids to efficient worker to needed workers. What's that word? That term? Yes. Essential workers. Essential workers. And what we intellectually learn hasn't always translated into economic terms. And what's more, there have been a lot of people underappreciated, underpaid in a completely societal way. When I say people, I mean professions and unions and guilds and arenas of work, and maybe just, I don't know, the entire middle class. And it'll be amazing if somewhere between the pandemic and, of all people, the Writers Guild as the tip of the spear to maybe start rebalancing some of the things that are out of whack in this economy that cause so much hurt and pain. And even for people in hurt and pain to act out in ways that don't benefit their own interests, but it feels good because they feel like they're striking out and who they've been told is the reason for their distress. Yeah. So no, I've still got my solidarity. Thank you, Star Trek Snack Squad, for these buttons. They're still at work. And there are still people in need of assistance, because as long as the writers, the actors are still on strike, there is no production. And that means everybody outside the writers and actors, it means all of the crews, all the support people who don't have a union. That means nobody is working still. And there is pain with rent, and there's pain with putting food on the table and not having jobs. So anybody that's still into that, if you saw our show with Claire Willett, the Star Trek Snack Squad, which aims to get snacks and food to everybody on the lines, the temperatures are coming down a little bit, but it's still tedious out there. And a lot of your favorites and all of our Treks are still down. What I hear is that some of the Trek shows that aren't close to filming, and we've got the big two. We've got Strange New live action, and then we've got further down the development pipeline, we've got Academy. And Section 31 is a 2-hour movie, but basically it's script written. So whatever the the structural, whatever the production work can be done that doesn't involve writing, or in Academy's case, conceptualizing, they're still in the R&D phase. So different phases of them can come back, and then once in a month, maybe less, when the actors are wrapped up and tied up and they're free to come back, and that strike is over, and everybody wants everything all at once. The hurry up and go. People will be ready to spring into action, and you'll see that across all the different the late night talk shows, the live shows, Saturday Night Lives, the scripted, the unscripted shows we used to call reality, that were anything but real. We'll see how that trickles back. And yeah, there won't be a fall per se, but maybe a mid-season will start to happen again. Depends on individual story type and what the lead time is. So that's the upfront on that. That's the confusion factor. So again, no writers picketing, writers strike on until the final votes are tallied and it's approved. Actors strike still in motion. No talks yet, but stay tuned. They might come any day as soon as they decide they can do both, finalize the writer's strike and sit down to prep up. This is on the producer's side, of course. SAG-AFTRA has been ready to go at any point. But yeah, the Writers Guild are the canary in the coal mine once again, and hopefully this won't take as long as even they did to get to the nitty-gritty. So, RIP writer's strike, fingers crossed. That's where we are right now. But RIP for somebody else. Someone that, if you are a nonfiction Star Trek fan, and here's my split focus. If you're a RIP Star Trek fan, somebody you know as the author of, this is the original companion edition. I've seen some people talk about 19. Now, this was part of the Simon & Schuster getting all the rights, the fiction rights from Bantam, the nonfiction rights from Ballantine, that sprung up with the first wave of Star Trek in the 70s. But with the coming of the motion picture, everything consolidated. and it went to Simon & Schuster, who was soon to join the Paramount family eventually. In those days, they technically weren't yet. Alan Eshelman did a version of, well, it was a combination of things. What had been our Bibles? The only Bibles we had as Star Trek fandom exploded into view was the good old Making a Star Trek book from Ballantine, right, by Steve Poe, or it's his real name. That was a Ballantine book. And now Simon & Schuster had the rights, and they needed a basic history making of Star Trek book. That fell to Alan Eshelman, who was not a babe in the woods. So Alan was part of what I lovingly call the New York Star Trek Mafia. Jeff Mandel, Doug Drexler, that bunch that was clustered around, in large part, the Federation Trading Post retail store, which is right across the street from the publishers who got early dibs. And why I want to remember that Alan was not an overnight sensation here. And if you got, people are really have rediscovered him just since he made an appearance this last year at the new Long Island Trek. I am so jealous and envious of the folks who got there. Alan passed away. I got the news from Edwin Thrower, who worked on that convention. Alan had just been interviewed at the con and did some interviewing remotely. Never had the chance to meet him. Unfortunately, when you were a kid, you were stuck in the Midwest, and everything in New York and LA might as well have been the Emerald City, with no even a yellow brick road to even follow to get you there. And then in elder days here, we're busy with all the current treks, working my way down through the original series, the 60s and the 70s era folks, the 80s era folks. My God, I finally got to talk to Harv Bennett in League for the Con of Wrath documentary, but was looking forward. First of all, for a few years, people couldn't find the gentleman, but that's why it was doubly shame. I had just gotten in touch with him through this reemergence, and it turns out that he died suddenly. Apparently, he had complications from a fall recently, and his health went downhill. He was 90, passed away Friday, Saturday. The obituaries are coming now. You're learning more about his life. A lot of folks that I'm envious of got to talk to him back in the day and now. But the best thing we can do now is talk about the legacy, a legacy that may have been overlooked in the avalanche of Star Trek writing that's happened since. But yes, he wrote the compendium. And, here's the deal. While Stephen Whitfield Poe's Making of Star Trek book was a classic, and it was the early Bible, and it was the only thing we had at the day, by the boom of the 70s, we started to have things like the giant poster book, which was a gimmick for the big poster, but also had incredible articles inside. Yeah, episode recaps, those were a dime a dozen, but people daring to get in and talk about Star Trek background, the Star Trek universe. And I remember the day I walked in and to my first visit to a comic book shop, nostalgia shop, and it happened to be issue 8 with McCoy on the cover. I still have my set. They're buried. I didn't dig them out, but what I wanted to talk about was walking into a store that had this beautiful color cover picture, not like what you'd seen technically when you managed to see color. And we're talking the 70s here, when I was a teenager, and just the thunderclap of not having any McCoy anything that you'd see in the catalogs, and walking in, and here he is on the front cover of the giant poster book in glossy, gorgeous color, because the gimmick of the poster, something that had to be in pre-digital times, something that would be have enough resolution, like a clear tranny, a transparency, bigger than a 35 millimeter slide. Because once you blew it up to even that size for a poster for your bedroom wall, that was the gimmick, right? It unfolded to where the different panels that had articles, finally you had a poster. Well, I never hung up my posters because I wanted to keep the magazine. And even then, some of the issues got used a lot. The Enterprise issue, the McCoy medical props issue, the issue of the history of the Federation with the timeline that wound up going into the medical reference, that wound up being the time, not the chronology timeline, but the one that became the basis, where Khan was not 200 years in the future, as he'd been told, or the 200 years. But anyway, we use the canon points, not one single lines of dialogue. My point is that Alan Ashman was part of all that. He was part of the 70s boom. He was lucky enough to get the history book so that Simon and Schuster had a Trek history on top of all the just glossy bits coming out of the movie, right? Which included the chronology as well. So now we had a making of book that was organized in pieces. And I will say that when I was lucky and privileged enough and broke through from the wilds of Oklahoma to get on the attention, to get the radar and be a finalist and then be chosen to do what became the Next Generation Companion, I had two models. I knew the bar that Stephen Whitfield Poe and B. Joe Trimble had, and what Alan Asherman had done. And it was a simple format here. It was a synopsis followed by his production notes, which if you see the first edition and then you see the one redone a few years later, which was always republished for each succeeding movie. This is the time of the motion picture, but for every 80s original series movie, they'd add in 4 or 6 pages, which I used to curse. I used to curse that. What do they think we are? We're going to buy a new book every time they slap 4 new pages in. I know now, working in licensed publishing, that was not Alan Asherman. That was Simon and Schuster. Here, just stick a few pages in. We're not going to reshoot the other bit. The big edit came with The Wrath of Khan. A lot of his suppositions and guessings were stripped out. The next edition of this and all the succeeding editions have a lot less speculation and a lot less personal memory and reflection. Alan was at the 66 Cleveland Worldcon, Tricon, when Gene brought his 2 movies to show before Star Trek had aired, when he brought The Cage and when he brought Where No Man. He was giving a preview to the hardcore science fiction audience to get the buzz started, as we would say now, and that's what happened. And Alan writes about that memory. It gets stripped away in later years. But a lot of the personal New York media references that he throws into the compendium are taken away. And it becomes stripped down, mainly to cram more. And after that first big re-edit, then it's just a matter of adding 4 or 6 or 8 pages for every succeeding movie, which in my youth, I thought was a ripoff. They're just slapping Star Trek on that to get us to buy it. Well, they were. And I acquired 1 or 2, later on just to have them. But no, that basic format is what I followed with a lot of tweaks. The things that I liked, but it's not organized enough. This needs to be bulleted right here. This doesn't include this. There was so much that I wanted to bring to and combine things from Bijo's concordance, even though I wasn't doing an encyclopedia. But yeah, Alan was one of the main, this is why he was one of the main models for what the companion became, including the fact that when we started doing this, they said, are we going to call this the TNG Compendium? And I said, no, that's going to get confusing. Why don't we call it a companion? And then if you do one for DS9, we can call it something else. I even had like a list of C words. We could have the compendium, the companion. And I know for a while, the TNG Compendium, it's like whenever you change something, the next thing that changes gets called wrong until the next come along. And suddenly everybody calls the second thing by its correct name. And then the third thing is called incorrectly when you do that. And so everything since then has just been a companion. But in the beginning, I said, no, let's not call it compendium again. So Alan will forever have the Star Trek Compendium for whatever that's worth. But Alan will forever have my thanks, even though, as I said, I never got to meet the man and was looking forward to doing it, even over Zoom here with help. But you should know that not only did Alan write, he was lucky enough there in New York to parlay that and get to do the Star Trek interview book, which not only has obligatory, right? This is from the 82 wave. This is when they're wanting more books as the Wrath of Khan nears. Isn't that right? 82? Oh, this is 88. All right. Wanting some of this down. He did interviews, not just with the cast and the leading guest stars, but this is some of the first behind the scenes real interviewing, aside from the snippets you'd get in World of Star Trek and some of the random interviews you'd see. This is the first mass published real interview book of behind the scenes folks, including the directors, those names you saw. And of course, the inspiration for everything I want to do about getting these people more attention and more insight for you into knowing that it goes way beyond the actors and even the writers, even though the writers get slighted and overlooked at times, the producers, but all the major guilds are represented in his interview book. And yes, I'm sure Memory Alpha has pilfered. I'm sorry, attributed a lot to that. But even better, Susan Sackett did a making of book for the motion picture. Gene was out of the favored nation status by then. Alan Asherman got to write a making of, the obligatory making of Star Trek II book. Did this sell a lot? No. That's why there is no making of Star Trek III book from Simon & Schuster from Pocketbooks. Is the finale with the casket on the... No, because one of the damn things about hardcore old school publishing is deadlines. And if you wanted a book to be out at the time of the movie release, you had a 6-month advance deadline. And guess who's still making basic decisions about movies? Guess who's still working on special effects? Guess who is not going to leak visual effects pictures with them potentially getting out if they're left laying around in a drawing room somewhere, in a drafting room in New York, and the janitor comes in and grabs the pictures, and now they're out and they've ruined the movie. Much less the timeline of when decisions are made. Much less what was in as we see with the novelizations, what was in a script and what was deleted. And you're writing, you're making a book. Not only are you not including the changes that happened organically, you're talking about things that were filmed that the public sees the movie in 1982 days and goes, that wasn't in the movie. Well, the concept of deleted scenes and a savvy movie TV media audience has come a long way in 40 years. We all know now what a gag reel is, i.e. the blooper reel. We all know now what deleted scenes are, and we have them as bonus features, not on VHS tapes, but yes, in the DVD and beyond era. So good on Alan, even though this book is, it so leans into the early bit. But even then, we weren't through the statute of limitations when anybody could legally admit that Nick Meyer actually wrote the script. So he's got to go through, talk about the early drafts, but just not give Nick Meyer credit for how he pulled them all together in 5 days, and they shot a movie without losing any more time. So yes, there's omissions, but still, he got to do this book. There's a lot laid down here. It has to go through the studio publishing, Happy Talk licensing. There's not going to be any real controversy here. Not that it needs to be yellow journalism, but just to talk about the creative differences. It was a very pristine time, and one that I was still navigating in the 80s with the companion, and was very happy when I could at least talk about creative differences without getting into the details. And thank you for Chaos on the Bridge for letting us talk about, Gene's attorney, Majlish. But Alan Asherman did all this. He wrote articles in the poster book. But he was more than Star Trek. He worked at DC Comics. He worked at Federation Trading Post. Doug knew him. Doug had the privilege to know him. The New York gang did. Jeff did. All the folks from that era. The late, great Anthony Fredrickson did. What I didn't realize until lately was it was Alan Asherman's extreme collection of Star Trek transparencies that provided all those blow-upable poster images. Without Alan's collection, you wouldn't have had the poster of the giant poster book. The giant poster would have been, maybe you were losing it when you went to page size, much less that big. But all the glorious, beautiful color shots and rare pics from a year of when everybody was collecting film clips, those were Alan's collection for the most part. Yeah. Doug and Jeff had theirs too. But what really got me was what may have been the first nonfiction behind the scenes writing on Star Trek. And thank you, Doug, for posting this in his Facebook. Back in the day, Starlog didn't exist. Starlog wouldn't exist until 76. And then barely, and then 77, 78. We were years away from behind the scenes writing, that there was a market for it. So it was Frankenstein, Castle of Frankenstein, one of the Monster Craze magazines of the mid-60s, that was genre that way. And somewhere between the Westerns and old-time radio world and the Monsters world, bridged over into some kind of, would each carry science fiction articles. I don't mean like literature like the sci-fi mags had. I mean behind the scenes bits. And Doug shared pages from issue number 11 of Castle of Frankenstein Monster with a color cover, but everything black and white inside, and an article that Alan Ashman wrote in June of 67. So as the first season of Star Trek is wrapping up, Alan has written an article in the closest thing to a genre magazine. It's everything. It's a look at the act. Everything is fresh and new. And he's talking about the philosophy and the smash that it's had in the genre world, sci-fi world. Excuse me. And talking about the cast, talking about interviews where you can find them, talking about visual effects, special effects, as we'd say then, and a little personal essay about how amazing Star Trek was just 1 year in. Remember, and to prove that, he's got a sidebar here where he talks about the alien worlds. He's got a still of the largely unused Taurus 2 creature, right, that's throwing boulders at the Galileo that they decided looked horrendous and we couldn't show. He's got the still of that wasn't used in the episode, but he asked the question talking about planets. When, oh, when will the Enterprise crew beam down on Spock's home planet, Vulcan, where everybody thinks logically, without emotion? Now, that would be quite an evening. He didn't know that, right about that time, they were conceiving and filming Amok Time. But he's written this piece before this introduction to Star Trek, the first glance at getting across who these actors are. And and he's using the studio biographies out of the press kit. I know he is. But he's looking at, the overlap of the universe's technology with getting the visual effects done. Anyway, it's a 4 or 5 page thing. Look at Doug's Facebook. It's an easy way to find it right now in the moment. It's a lot of the black and white pictures wind up being in Steve Poe's book, which is another year or two away, end of the second season. And it just reinforces how long Alan had been part of the sci-fi genre scene. And again, he worked at DC Comics. He did odd jobs as a writer in New York, but you could do that in the 60s, and you could do it in New York, and he was well-based. Again, Alan Asherman, far more than just the compendium. All these books, all that writing, all the rest of his career, passed away at 90. I selfishly say, damn, I did not get to talk to him, but there are interviews. He's got a body of work, and I'm going to say that over the next few months, a lot of it's going to be resurrected and come to light. I just want to do my part here to say, let's all give a shout out. Let's all give a hat tip. And so envious of the folks at Long Island Trek who got to see him and meet him and hear from him and see him do some interviews that got to start to begin to see, as we've done so often with the names who are buried along the way, whether they worked on the show, on the series, and I'm talking especially the original series, or helped perpetuate it, help get the word out there and preserve the stories and preserve the voices of the creators in their own way, helped pass along Star Trek and preserve it for us. And know what an amazing, as much as we crank out new Star Treks now and worry about just remembering what a struggle and what a gobsmacking event the original series was. So for everybody who blithely sits back here in 2023 and critiques the original series without context, without thinking what an uphill boulder that was to push to the top of the hill for Gene and all of his team. And then for marketing and salespeople and an audience to win acceptance and to talk about Star Trek outside your sci-fi closet. And where we are today and how Star Trek, yes, enabled Star Wars and enabled the geek revolution by the 80s, by the late 70s, much less the 80s, and everything that's come since. And Alan was part of that generation, part of that crowd, and had a huge hand in bringing it to the masses. So, R.I.P. Alan. R.I.P. Alan Asherman, dead at 90 after an incredible life and not near enough attention that we are going to remedy now. So, yes. Thanks, everyone. Let's let me take a breather here. And speaking of the help, thank all of our Patreons for helping me bring this every week. So thank you in our TTL club. Thanks to Diana Hopkins, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, Anne-Marie Siegel, Justin Porteous, Galinda Bruton, Chris Jiggins, Pranakasha Productions, Comedy Forecaster Andrew Jazimski, and our live wires. That's Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Hubbard Gunjohnson, Alan Hoensi, Dave Gregory, Tobias Rex, Donna S. Runyon, and Casey Shafsky. If you'd like to join them and help me do this, again, my very simple Patreon. I've had people go, why don't you have more levels? That may be in the offing down the line. But for right now, I say $5, $10 a month through Patreon. If you haven't checked it out, it's there. There are other crowdfunding support apps out there. I'm just going to stick with Patreon for now. I know. Patreon.com/Trekland Live. Thank you so much and appreciate it. It's a shout out, and the $10 folk get access, which I need to do again, access to our early archive of another batch from the earlier years of Portal 47. Speaking of which, just join Portal 47. It's awesome. Hey, we are still on hiatus, as a reminder, for the Trek Files, but there's 10 years. There's 240 episodes there. Speaking of folks no longer with us, some of them are included in there too, like Dorothy Fontana, like Richard Arnold, and Gerald Fried, the composer. So lucky to have him on just a couple years ago. The Trek Files is there. We will be back in a few weeks from hiatus with a new season, our 11th season. But for right now, you can check it out. And there's a new podcast at Roddenberry called Genealogy, where my good friend Earl Green and Norm Lau are looking at the meanings, morals, and messages of Gene's non-Star Trek work. And we don't just mean the Lieutenant or those 30 scripts of Have Gun Will Travel, if you can even find them. No, they're looking at the catalog. They're looking at Gene's files too, with a whole different purpose, to look at the meat and how much of Gene's Trek philosophy was present in everything he wrote, even as a younger writer, even as an older writer. Look for that, and look for me anywhere you find the little X-Bird at Larry Nemechek there. Hey, it's Larry Nemechek's Trekland right here on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and share, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Also on Instagram, also on Facebook. Yeah, it's portal47.net, and I'm serious. You can help us out there and be part of the Portales community. Tomorrow night is guest night for September, and I'm so thrilled after years of chasing him to finally get, I mentioned him earlier, Jeff Mandel. It's just a thing to me because we were kids when we first started writing long distance. Oh, not calling, long distance cost. But a New York kid and an Oklahoma kid working on backgrounding Star Trek, he was in the hot seat and got to write and contribute to the poster book and to the medical reference and create his own self-publishing before that was a thing that I could understand. The officer's manual. And then, yes, we finally meet when he's working on Star Trek Generations, of all things. Oh, my God. And then Insurrection and Enterprise and Voyager for a bit, and the star charting, and then on Picard season 2 and 3. Can't wait to have Jeff finally in our Portal 47 guest window. But that's going to do it for me. I'm leaving right now. If you're watching later, I'll stick around live, so don't go anywhere if you're with me right now. But for everybody who's catching this later on YouTube, I wish you could join us sometime on a Tuesday, 1-ish Pacific, 4-ish Eastern. That's only 9 UK time, 10 Central Europe. So yeah, we have, and the Aussies are the next morning. So thanks for joining us again. Join us live if you can. Check out everything Star Trek at LarryNemechek.com. Everything Trekland, I should say. Star Trek's a little bit wider berth, but everything in my corner that you see, including the TeePublic shop for some swag, for some stuff, cool stuff. That's all there at TeePublic too. So yes, everybody, please stay healthy, do the things, get a booster shot, and flu and the whole bit. When did we become so anti? Oh, forget it. Forget the politics. If you could time travel back to the 50s and tell people lining up to get the polio shot that there might be a problem with it, no one would care because the alternative was so horrendous. It got better, I thought. So please do all the things. Oh, yeah, and stay woke. Check the sources. I guess what I'm saying once again, struck well, everybody. All righty. My goodness. May, thank you so much. All right. Let me show you. Let me just do one real quick visit with the parrots just to look. And I'm saying that because I'm talking about, hello, computer. I'm talking about the parrot's latest numbers as sold license to the site TV Geek, which is trying to talk to you about, come on, gang. There we go. Which is talking to you about the latest hit shows. Come here to see what's popular. Well, the latest numbers on Lower Decks, our current series, and again, the animateds, the half hours and the animateds always rank lower than the live streams in the parrot system. Probably that's a reflection of reality. Sadly, because you're missing out on Prodigy and you're missing out with Lower Decks. I mean, last week's Orion show was pretty much the foundational canon show for Orions, aside from the bits and pieces we've gotten over the years. But no, this week, Lower Decks and all of TV-ness that they measure by scouring the internet with their analytics, with their algorithm, with their average demand expression every week to week, although they're measuring day by day here. The U.S. numbers alone, and they measure around the world, the U.S. numbers have them at ranking at number 109, which is actually up 26. They actually peaked in the last week. They peaked at 24. Their average was 23. So I don't understand why they say 109 here. The score was 23, which is 23 times more popular than an average show. The rank of all shows was at 109. So not the top 10. But that's up 26. That's up nearly 6% on a trend from their measurements last week. So there is that. And they show you the up and down day to day. It's a little unsatisfying, but just to know that in their own system, they're still in the upper 2.5% of all shows when I say they're number 109. So Lower Decks is amazing. Do I have to tell any of you that? Is anybody over their animation thing, filtered distance? You shouldn't be, because they're doing amazing things. And it's not just the yuck-yucks. They're really doing some amazing character work. I talk about it on my second opinion. You should check out the second opinion. Let's dive into, let's do a little about a half hour chat here. I'm just trying to not have such a sprawly show. And, as I said, we're going to cycle back here and see what's up with everybody. So glad to see everybody if you're here, and we'll dive in. I'm always appreciative of actual questions. And as I get to them, actual questions from the super chatters, of course, first, which is a function of YouTube. There's no super chat on Facebook and Twitch. So come over and watch on YouTube if you can. But yes, happy fall. It's autumn. Those actors, of course, are going to have cooler times. This is here. Can I guarantee your safety if you wear a red shirt to your Trekland trucks? Absolutely. I have not lost anyone yet. Especially if your red shirt is of the 24th century variety. Well, this is interesting. Fran says video games may be up next for negotiation. Gang, there's a revolution happening. So much of the video game world, so much of the voice actor world, so much of especially when you get beyond commercials and industrials. If it's like dubbing anime, none of that is unionized. Those people work for dirt, and that's grueling long work. Doing games and audiobooks, that's hours and hours, and you always agree to an upfront fee, and you never have almost, unless you have the clout to do it. Like an upper level actor or writer or director can rise above guild minimums. Unless you have the clout to get your own deal, those voice actors and dubbers work in situations a lot of times where if it's a mass project, like a game, like an audiobook, they can do redos without any, they just have unlimited redos. I mean, it's great when you have unlimited drinks or unlimited French fries, but for them to be in a studio for hours and hours and only get paid a certain amount up front. So that's the kind of thing that, and I'm not saying that it's a slave taskmaster industry, but that's a norm. So video games, all those sidebars that get by without being unionized. And we've had the technologies around now for 10, 20, 30 years. Video games aren't new. So the massive multiplayer games aren't new, much less anime and cartoons and animation and dubbing. And you all know what the situation with even the writers are. I know the Prodigy writers are under tag. I'm pretty sure the Lower Decks are too. They're under tag, not SAG. Or not, they're under tag, not Writers Guild. But there you go. Yes, JR. And you should share last name with Fran's last name there with us too when you get a second. Okay, Christoph, I didn't literally mean you had to do a weather report, but okay. Freezing in sight, huh? Okay. All righty. Christoph, of course, coming to us from Innsbruck, Austria, site of the 1968 Winter Olympics, but in Western Austria, far from Vienna, over on the Switzerland side. Hey, okay, Christian. I say that every week almost lately, and now today we actually get real weather reports. So there we go. Yes, Carl, I know. The year I'm not there is the year they have more Trek guests than ever. And I know Jerry from Crusher Convo was there, and I'll have to hear about it. Hey, Toyota, it's been a while since I've seen you. Axnar getting snapped up by a literal UFO cult. Well, I've had other things to pay attention to, but that's interesting. Hey, it's Star Trek world. What can I say? Yes, absolutely. I didn't mean to leave Dave McCollum out. And all the talk about Ducky from NCIS for anybody older than 40, I wanted to make sure. I tweeted about him and said close Channel D. I want to make sure people remembered David McCollum as Ilya Kuryakin from The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and how amazing that was. Technically, a couple of years before Chekhov, but a major sympathetic Russian character on American TV in the height of the Cold War. I'm glad, Melanie, that Bradward Boimler's future birthplace is Broke Summer, hopefully. There was a making of Star Trek book. Yes. Well, Duralta, that was the compendium, which came along later. Where can I get it here? This is not my copy. Here's the original cover. Boom. Yes. This came out at the end of the second season and doesn't even have the third season episodes in the episode list. From Ballantine. That was in print for at least 20 straight years. That was in print until the mid-late 80s, and then it went into other publishers. Yeah, but through the 60s and 70s, and what I did not realize later was that book just talking about how Star Trek's TV production was made. It was the first time any book about any TV production was printed for the mass audience. Classes, college classes, film and TV classes would use that as an easy to get accessible book just to show. It was cool that it was Star Trek in the 70s and the 80s. That was a big help. But I didn't realize as a kid that I wasn't just picking up how Star Trek was made. I was picking up how TV was made. And there are the technologies have improved Deadlines have altered, but a call sheet's still a call sheet. And a production report's still a production report. And an online is still an online. Scripts are still broken down and budgeted out. Production meetings still. There's, there are still costumers and visual effects and makeup and set construction and go down the line, and art departments and writers' rooms. Writing has changed, but there's still the craft of writing. And there's still the color correction wheel. And there's still, all of that is amazing. And that was in his book, just for TV in general, much less the Star Trek making. Happy birthday to Star Trek Enterprise today. Yes. I could have gone here, but I wanted to talk about Alan, and then I had to talk about the strike being over. Yes. Yes, the making Star Trek. Yes. How to write a Star Trek book. Well, do what I did. Read Steve Poe's book, read Alan's book, look at Bijo's. Bijo was my model for my concordance. That got me the oh, it's a long story. Let's see. That was funny. Let's see who I'm looking for actual questions. Okay. Mild and a bit of rain in Michigan. Thank you, Dave. Let's see. Oh, well, don't freeze in your non-heated hotel tonight, Christoph. It's always best if you make the decisions. Knew him from NCIS and later on knew him from another show, The Kid, The Invisible Man. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he had other credits. He didn't just work in the 60s and then the aughts. All these years. Here you go. Hello, Maria. Glad you're in with us from Brazil, which your time zone is not, obviously, you're within what, a couple of hours? Are you our Eastern time zone? I forget. Of course, Brazil's big. You probably got more than one time zone. Or maybe not. I don't know. Let's see. I'm glad we could help on a mission, Cairo. Good to see you. Oh, let's see. Looking questions. Okay, we're in the beer conversation here. Let's see. And Man from Uncle. And David Weston is the Invisible Man. Yes. Yeah, he was a working actor. He had a wonderful career. But the things he will be known for are Elia and Ducky. Yeah. Okay, everybody's looking forward to leaves turning. That's cool. Let's see. Hello, Rose. Good to see you. Oh, we got Don Ranger Power is here. Hey ho. Let's see. And if I'm leaving you out, hey, Analysis. Well, thank you for agreeing. She always answers the people who contribute to any capacity to Star Trek when they pass. Well, right, because without the Alan Ashermans, you wouldn't have the information. You would just sit and blind, which is enough for people. But like I say, when you've watched a rerun 3 or 4 times and you love the show, what is the difference between that show you watch 2 or 3 times and move on and the movie that you say, I have to know more? Well, Star Trek is all. That's why Star Trek's been around 60 years. And even popular shows that fade eventually. I hate to say it, but Firefly's fandom is actually starting to wane a little bit after being an amazing story. I thought only thing that was close to Star Trek was Firefly. Star Wars is a totally different critter. It's the bigness of movies. Talking about a series where people need the week to week adventure. Well, hi May, and thank you. And yes, absolutely. Well, this is what I say, Doralta. I mean, eventually something would come along, but what would it look like and how would it be different? Eventually, you would like to think some intelligent, issues oriented, accurately future projected science projected would come along, but what would it look like and how soon? How soon? And would it be all those things combined into one package? You know. The Patreons call out Needle. Thank you, Christoph. Let's see. Looking here. Well, thank you, Christoph. This is what I keep saying. If you really want to support me more and be just deeper into Star Trek, this is just little tidbits here. Portal 47 is all month long. Well, it's technically all month long with our connective tissue of our site, our page, our private page, and 3 live events and more in the mailings. But it is much more than you'd get here. And it's only, just a little more. This is true. Star Trek stood on the shoulders, but there had been no regular character intelligent science fiction recurring cast before Star Trek. There had for a year called Lost in Space. Not exactly future projected science, not exactly allegories on current topical issues. So if you want to call that serious and adult, then there you go. And no matter what it might have started out to be, there you go. Well, Leslie Nielsen had been in other things too. He was a working actor. He might have said that Forbidden Planet stereotyped him a little bit, but I don't think so. He still had his square-jawed action guy roles when he was younger. Why, thank you, Doralta. I just thought of it on the run. It just came to me. Hey, Sean. Yeah, well, and Andromeda it's kind of like logical. It's like if you're going to show the status quo of a commonwealth that's a utopia, a wonderful place to live, you can show the building of it, which they never got to do in Gene's time, and that's what Enterprise would have been. Or you show a down cycle where you're trying to get back to it, and that's what Andromeda would have been. You saw a little bit of that with Discovery, but Discovery kind of hedged. It was amazing what they were able to do on their budget, but it wasn't that built in from scratch. And that's what the animated series that Dave Rossi pitched, I forget what it was called, Star Trek Universe, I think. That's what the animated series, it would have been 5-minute chapters on the original StarTrek.com when everything blew up. That's what that would have been. It would have been a cycled down Federation trying to cycle up, and there were reasons why that happened and trying to overcome those odds. A lot like what Discovery took and ran with. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, so yes, thank you, May. Sheba Dog. Thank you, Sheba Dog. Cool. Duralta. An ex-parrot. Yes. Well, I guess that means that Twitter really would have rung down the curtain and joined the choir invisible. Yes. Okay. Actual questions. Actual questions. Well, yes, Doralta, and I actually let myself post one reply on Instagram or Facebook or something last night, the other day. And by now, it's like, how many million people have had different stages of the vaccine? The originals, the boosters, the VSTs, or whatever it is, the VSR. Wouldn't we have millions and billions of deaths by now all over the world? Wouldn't the population of the world have declined 80 or 90% if that was all true? I it's like, how do these people still walk the earth? I don't know. I don't know. As long as Drew Carey doesn't buy the Peacock, so we end up with the Drew Peacock. I'm missing that one. Sorry. Well, Don, you are not alone. It's Cadet Alice's favorite Star Trek. Now, there are a lot of people that have been shocked. Not that they didn't like Prodigy, they just didn't take it seriously. And even getting over the Lower Decks, I'm sure the ratings for Prodigy are still below even Lower Decks. But the more people, and this whole going away for a while and not being it's a bored day, I think I'll watch some Prodigy finally. That's not even an option for folks unless they get the DVD Blu-rays. By the way, those are out there on sale, and I will have more to say about that next week. Okay. Part 2 of season 1 is finally out on Blu-ray. Yes. Let's see. 50. Lower Decks, aka 50 Shades of Orion Green. Yeah. In more ways than one. Yes, it's your spring in Brazil. Our fall, your spring. So happy spring. Spring has sprung. Actual question from Duralta. I'm amazed, Duralta, it took you this long. What do I think? What Star Trek character would have been a good character for David McCallum to play? Oh my God. You mean a regular in the era? I mean, David McCallum could have been a British captain, Starfleet. He might have been a good. How would David McCallum have looked in original series Orion Ears as a shifty Orion? I don't know. Would David McCallum have submitted to doing blue makeup to be an Orion, to be an Andorian? I don't know. Or as he matured? Why do I feel like going into Ducky? He could have. Well, yeah, he could have been. He could have been a scientist. He could have played the scientist for the comeback of Dr. Crusher in season 3 with the nanites. The guy that played the doctor on Scrubs, Ken. What was his name? He could have done that character, maybe. Let's see. Yeah, the anime industry still the pure anime and the redubbing is although there's a lot of companies in the Midwest that are redubbing, right? Funimation out of Dallas is the one I'm most familiar with. David McCallum would have made a great doctor in Section 31. Yeah. Actual question, JR. Do I have a broadcast journalism background or radio? Your flow of information is smooth and impressive. I had some TV and radio classes, but I couldn't major in it because I went to a school that didn't have the major yet. So I minored in journalism. Well, this has all come from the last 10. I have a theater degree. So all of that I learned was helpful. Sang a lot, was in front of folks. So yeah, but if you look at if you look at the earliest DVDs, even the Blu-rays from 10, 12 years ago, no, this intensity of doing the live every week, just the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it's been a lot more helpful to be savvy, to be on with the camera and just know what we're doing. But thank you, JR. Thank you. That's very, very nice of you to say. I did, but it was not anywhere near. I have a blooper commercial that I did in a TV class for the Romco Super Secret Home Special Effect. This Romco Super Special Home Visual Effects Kit, including glitter for your. Oh no, I should dig that. It's black and white though, but I should dig that out and show it. It was the send off for at the end. You have the 800 number with the send here. Stock footage, Wyoming. Yeah. But thank you for that. That's very kind. And here's the Olympics ticker now sending off. Thank you, Don. Innsbruck was in 64. Ooh, then I'm okay. I was a little kid. That was the first Olympics I remember seeing. But I remember Innsbruck. I don't remember. I know now that the 64 Olympics were in Rio. The Mexico City Olympics with the raised fist were the first ones I really remember, kind of. But the first Olympics I will remember were the Iranian athletes that were killed by the terrorists, taken hostage and killed. It kind of spoiled the 72 games. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, JR. Fran. Yes. SAG after present. Yes. As they should. I was going to mention, though, 2 different units of visual effects creators. One is at Disney and one Marvel Disney, and I forget the other one. But 2 different units have voted to have a union election. They want to organize and get under the, so visual effects, the animation, the visual effects industry, digital industry is heavily not unionized. And I just go back to the horror story that was the Life of Pi. So the entire 3/4 of that movie was digital at sea, and it won Oscars, and the company filed for bankruptcy right before the Oscar ceremony. No protection for their workers who were about to collectively win an Oscar that some visual effects producer wound up taking home on the backs of all those now fired, laid off, not fired, just laid off, imploded. Yeah, they did an in joke about, he said, I bet Ducky was something when he was younger. And he said, oh, you look like Ilya Kuryakin. Yes. Yeah. Really, Toyota? Okay. Well, I will, if I have a moment, I will check into that and look and see. But yes, everybody, happy 22 for Enterprise. My goodness. There we go. It's good to see Linda Park at Star Trek Day, by the way, along with Anthony and Dominic and Connor there, and the Shuttlepod show crew. All right. We are looking. It's 3 o'clock here. Looking at. You're ahead. So you're Atlantic time. Okay, the maritime provinces of Canada are lined up with you then. All right. Real question, Duralta. I'm going to get in here. Do I think without the whole problem with Majel Barrett being painted green and always getting back color correct, we would have had a Hulk show? Wouldn't have had a Hulk show. Well, it's weird. They would have. It was one of those things that was going to get figured out eventually. It's when it was something of somebody trying with, it was such a miscommunication, and it didn't have to be done in one day. So it was getting maddening, but it was like there was enough time for the truth to break through. I guess that's one thing. And it was an innocuous. It wasn't like there was an intentional conspiracy going on to prevent green people from being on TV, especially when most people are going to see it as black and white anyway, shades of gray. Oh, wait, that's TNG. Do I think there might be commentary tracks on the season 2 Strange New? As far as I can tell, there's no sign of them. Have they? I'm sorry, guys. I just get the discs when they show up. Have they advertised them yet? I can't believe there would be no commentary tracks unless somehow the strike got in the way. But that should have been done way before most of that is done simultaneous with the show. So we will look and see, or maybe somebody else has got there where they can look up right now. All right. See, I thought Brazil was too huge to try to squeeze into one time zone. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, the sad thing is, Melody, that we're always going to be losing beloved people. There we go. We're always going to be losing folks like that. And when you're a performer, when you're in media of any kind, athletes, public personalities, especially performers, storytellers of any kind that are in mass media, then they have a huge audience and we're aware of them. So they're going to be beloved to way more than their immediate family and friends. So they're always going to be passing, sadly, after having had an impact. Quick question on IMDb credits. They must miss a heap of work because actors can't be surviving on 3 guest appearances a year. Well, Sean, the truth is, yes, they do. 2 things. They are either a guest appearance that paid well because maybe they're recurring. Maybe they have a clout name and they get better than minimums, than the guild minimum, the contract minimum. Or they're recurring special on a certain show where they get bumped up a little more because people like them. Or they're on a show that gets residuals quickly and they can do that. Or they have another job. They do something else. Maybe they coach. Maybe they teach. Maybe they do lawn work. Maybe they're a good old waiter or bartender. But yes, yeah, they do get by on 3 a year because that's their craft and they're in the market to climb the ladder, to get a regular role, to have a breakthrough, to do a film that makes a ton of money and rewards them more faster than a single guest episode. But back in the day, yes, people could at least have a 50% income from 3. That's what's been so wrong that's the streaming revolution winnowed all that down. It got to the point where regular actors, regular cast, regular staff writers couldn't make a living. And it's a short season, not a long season. 10 is shorter than 22 or 26. So there's a lot to, that's the way it's going to be. Then people have to be compensated. So you can't be running around working twice as hard and making half as much as you did 10 years ago. That's insane. And it's not like the industry was drying up. So the industry's booming. Look how much they're paying their CEOs. And that was the crux of this whole thing. That's what made it so obvious to most in the public. And then they went, oh, this is exactly the same as in every other industry. It just took the writers had a very good social media campaign and got the attention. For every one, oh, they're Hollywood elitists, and they're not. 99% of them are not. There were 4 teachers or auto workers or coal miners, or you name the industry that's in some different shape, but the same phenomenons happen to them. The workers' wages have been basically stagnant for 20, 30, 40 years, and the CEOs have spiked and upper management. So yes, absolutely, there are some that have. Yeah, and that's not to say there are not a lot of missing IMDb credits. I tend to think they're more on the crew side than on the actors because that's their life. That's their bread and butter. That's their life work. They need those to be as updated as fast as possible. Unless, of course, there's something they want to hide. Does the strike block freshly made bonus content on DVD BR boxes impossible? Well, as far as actors go, I don't know if writers provided the scripts. I'm going to say in a lot of ways, no, because the budgets on DVD things are so cheap. It's probably somebody that just works in an office and cobbles a script together. That was my experience 15 years ago when I worked on a couple. If you're talking about the actors part, they probably shot anything before July, right? The writers had 2 months head start on the actors. They probably shot anything being released now was probably recorded way before the strike started, and may have people were cramming things in on the eve of things going downhill and the strikes looking like they were likely to be called. And yes, driving cabs, Uber driving now. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, the original Doctor Who came very close to being yanked several times, and it was just a kid show, you know. This is interesting. You want to, what was that? Across the Universe? The world where the Beatles didn't exist? It looks a lot like the world that we know. I think the world without Star Trek would be much different. We'll have big honking phones that we carry in our pockets. Yes. All right. All right. Final Frontier was the name of it. Okay. I just think of it as Dave's Star Trek series, and he's not the only one. I know. Did Star Trek ever hire a historical advisor for time travel episodes or historically set holodeck adventure episodes? Not per se, but I think that's where they relied on Kellum DeForest or blanked on her name, his successor that worked for him, Joan Pierce. That's where they just relied on Kellum DeForest or Joan Pierce to do general backgrounding and tone setting, and then the writers, room pool. Earth Final Conflict, Star Trek, and Andromeda could have worked as a mega trilogy for humanity and aliens. Yeah, actually, yes. Okay, kids. Mona, this is true, but I think that wall is falling, especially with the silver lining of the cancellation and the erasure is that it got so much attention and people bragging on it. There you go. Aaron's showing Prodigy is on Amazon bestsellers #4. Oh, sorry, Maria. We'll get this to you somehow. We need to get it back on a streaming home, and then hopefully one that you can access. You and your hey, Dr. Anne Marie, or Dr. Siegel, I guess I should say. Sean, there is an old joke on Enterprise, a crew joke slide for a rap party. The Blue Man Group with a couple of Andorian extras. Thank you, Ken Jenkins. I knew it was Ken something. Yeah, Ken Jenkins. I didn't watch enough Scrubs credits. Hey, Galinda. No, you are never too late. We're about to wrap, but it's always good to see you, and thank you for being a Patreoner. Sean, I probably knew this 20 years ago, Sean, but thank you for the refresh. Dana Carvey's brother invented the video toaster. All righty. That's like Mike Nesmith's mother invented whiteout, liquid paper. Oh, David McCollum was on a Babylon 5. There you go. Never saw most Babylon 5s. Just keeping my memory separated. Okay. Yeah, Fran. I didn't know you were on first name basis. Fran Drescher. She started off with that PR gaffe, but then right before the eve of the strike. But then since then, she's been a great leader, especially as a public face. You expect the Actors Guild leadership to be publicly savvy as actors more than you expect the Writers Guild leadership to be, pretty out there. There were a lot of funny memes about that, different overlay memes, SAG and Writers Guild. Hey, Andrew, I'm glad you did. I was running late myself too today. So how do I think the actors' strike will be influenced by the possible writers' talk? Like I said, the writers kind of broke. Now they at least have concepts and terms and linkages and things they can wrap their arms around. They have a Rosetta Stone here. Now they can translate the actors' issues, whether it's money issues or AI or whatever. They have something they can build on there. Did one of my devices call the end of the chat? Probably. We need to get it there though. Actors did one role on Trek and get hired by conventions every week. Well, they put themselves out there. Why not? Why not turn down the... Now you can if you are a one-off person, you shouldn't oversaturate. You should what the market bears, right? But there have been some amazing one-off guest actors. Right. Destination Trek has even announced some faceless, nameless Trek characters. There you go. Oh my. There's your influence coming around. Okay. I am looking for real questions. Well, Toyota, I will look into this and see. We'll see what's coming up about commentary tracks for season 2. Real quick question. The people that did the door opening, that was just live effects. That was special effects, but special effects was anything from running the doors like that to explosions on set and putting squibs. When you would have any kind of a gun, even a phaser would hit somebody and there'd be a little bit of an explosion or a pop or something. Those are called squibs. And loading those up and running them safely, that's special effects. And that's what, and Will Toms was the master door opener through most of the TNG Voyager era. And I think Enterprise 2, and he was a guest on Portal 47. I think I even have him in the poster, or he may have been squeezed out. Anyway, some of our veteran Portales will remember Will, and they're the kind that go, "Oh, I didn't do anything." It's like, no, I want to know. Will was not part of the original series team, though. We can probably figure out who that was, though. The famous blooper door non-opens. And for every blooper of a door not opening, you forget about the other 15 that did. So it's occasionally. There you go, Analysis. You're welcome. Enduralta. And there we go. You'd be more interested. Blue Men, big deal. You want to see green? I have seen a Green Woman group. They were based out of Louisiana, out of Lake Charles. Okay. Thanks, everybody. We're winding down. Yeah, I think so. I don't think the electronics are, you can't hang up in the moment. I think they still do. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today, gang. So thank you much for joining us here on Tuesday. Again, if you would, I want to thank, first off, all of our Patreoners. Thanks, everybody, for doing live chats and super chat. Especially, thank you for doing that. Here's our Patreons. You can do that too, month to month, at whatever level. Thanks to all of you, gang. And thanks for checking it out, if you would. You can go higher, but that's the minimums. It's patreon.com/Trekland Live. Appreciate that. And hey, appreciate you checking out the Trek Files. You can take a look at all the Roddenberry podcasts at podcast.roddenberry.com. We're at Facebook. That's the links. You can go back. That's where you'll find the documents and some photos too that go with each episode. You can scroll back to your heart's content. You can go over to Libsyn or any of the other archives of the iTunes, all the places, and get the podcast itself. The Trek Files. Check that out too. Thanks so much. And of course, on the X-Bird. You like that, huh? Larry Nemechek. Haven't gone over big time anywhere yet. We're still monitoring the situation there. But it's Larry's Trekland on YouTube. Please, everybody, go subscribe if you haven't already and ring the bell so you know what's happening. Also on Facebook, also on Instagram, and portal47.net is where you can be with us all through the month, all through the year. Way more than what our little nugget that we get into here every week. Gonna do it for me, gang. So don't forget the TeePublic store pops up with sales every once in a while. You might want to check that out. Lots of other people have TeePublic stores too as well. A lot of Star Trek stuff there too, besides my brands. So we will be watching to see what happens with the actors strike. We'll be watching. The striking is not going away. All of those groups you can support to help the industry that's affected beyond just the writers and actors. All the support staffs, they're all there. The Green Grocer envelope, the Entertainment Community Fund, SAG-AFTRA's Foundation. SAG-AFTRA is still on strike. All those groups have got people hurting now after so many months of no shooting. It's the light at the end of the tunnel, but we are not back at full strength by any means. That won't even start to happen until, for 95% of the industry, until the actors are off strike. But we're on the road, and we have language that can be applied to the actors now, and we'll see. And we'll hear more about exactly what all is in the writer's deal and how close to their, usually you think about a compromise. But when you started off with 1 and 0 and 100, is 50 the actual compromise? We'll see. We will see, and we will be here to talk about it. So everybody, yes, please, until we see you next time, please. And Second Opinion coming on Saturday, don't forget. Actually, along with another Cadet Alice. You got to check my Instagram for those things. Yeah. Until we cross paths again. So please, please, please. Stay healthy, do all the things. Stay woke, check your sources, and Trek well, everybody.